Hi class, it's me again. We're on the final chapter for this semester, chapter 13, Talk Through, for Adolescent Development, FHS 1230. And the topic is psychosocial problems in adolescence. So we've talked a lot about, throughout the semester, problems that adolescents have. But I don't know if we remind everybody that most of these issues are resolved in adolescence. You might try some, deviant behavior for a little while, and then as you grow and mature, you kind of just grow out of it and realize it's not the way that you'd like your uh, life to go. Remember that the media oversimplifies everything. It seems like as a teenager they portray that you're black or white, either totally bad or totally good, and we all know that there are shades of, the colors in between. And your book will talk about externalizing problems and internalizing problems. Externalizing problems are things that you actually do, like delinquent behavior, being violent, drug use, and things like that. Internalizing problems are when you turn them inside to yourself, depression and anxiety. And so these are ways people deal with different problems and their different feelings. The rest of the chapter will talk about different externalizing problems, different internalizing problems, and then talk a little bit about stress and coping. Okay, let's talk about the prevalence of substance use and abuse. And we have to remember that the use is different from abuse, and that not everybody gets to the abuse stage, but a lot of people will, use things and try them out. Society will send you mixed signals on drugs and alcohol, like the DARE program and other things. Everyone tells you just say no. But then commercials and TV shows show that all these people having a lot of fun with alcohol and at parties and things like that. Um, there is a difference between media and reality. Remember that they show a lot of substance use, sometimes abuse, and in reality, there's not as much use and abuse as the media portrays. As far as during adolescence, daily use is not frequent. Some people will, party on the weekends and partake of things that are not great for your body, and usually they just leave it to the weekend. Becomes problematic when it is daily use. And of course, alcohol is the most prevalent of the um, substances that are used and abused. Um, and drinking and driving or riding with a person who's been drinking, those are very dangerous activities with long-lasting consequences. 6% of high school seniors have driven after drinking. That is a low percent, wish it were lower. 16% have ridden in a car with a driver who's been drinking, and that is way too high. I have a niece who probably 30 years ago they were drinking and driving after prom, got in a car accident and killed him. And she's still affected by it today. It bothers her. She has some, mental issues still with dealing with that. And she said, we just never thought it would happen to us, which is what a lot of people end up saying. So think about it. What characteristics do students have who have a smaller chance of substance abuse? So notice it's worded like everybody has a chance, but let's look to see whose chances are smaller. First of all, they would be students who do not do sports because, athletes tend to find more opportunities for substance abuse. These are not students who have jobs after school for the same reason, but these are students who are high in academics and have close-knit families. It's interesting that family dynamics makes a big difference in a lot of things that we've talked about this semester. Um, so high academic achievement and close family relationships are important. Before we talk about this, look at the old-time cigarette machine. This is one that I remember they had. My dad was in the military, so we had they call it a teen club where you went and they had food and music and you could study there, although no one ever did. They just hung out. But in the hallway, before you went into it, there was a cigarette machine. You put your quarter in and you pulled the lever to whatever cigarettes you wanted. There was no monitoring of who did it, who didn't. Of course, at 25 cents a pack, it wasn't like a huge thing. But I haven't seen one of these in forever, which is good. And what could society do to lessen drug use, including alcohol, including cigarettes, including, illegal drugs and things like that? Some of the things that they've tried so far that have worked, been successful, is raising the prices. I don't know what a pack of cigarettes costs nowadays, but I know it's up over $5. And that's a lot of difference. They also have raised the minimum age. I didn't think when I was younger there was an age where you were allowed to smoke. I think they just kind of didn't worry that much about it because the cigarette companies had never come out and said there's anything wrong with it. And laws now are barring sales to minors. And those are things that we've tried that have been successful, but we probably need more. And so just kind of think to yourself what society could do to lessen drug use. Okay, so let's look at externalizing behaviors that are antisocial. And remember, externalizing are things that you do. So it would be like being violent, having a conduct disorder, being aggressive, doing illegal things, juvenile offenses. Um, Actually, violent crime has gone down since 1970s. Somebody is honking in my neighborhood, sorry. The male to female ratio of violent activity is 3.5 males to every female. But um, it female violence is becoming more and more common also. Um, but thank goodness it is not rising, even though we hear about it more and more. This I thought was an interesting chart. It's figure 13.9 in your book, right after the section on causes of antisocial behavior. And I tried to just copy paste from the book, but that didn't work. So I had to draw my own. So if it's a little lame, you'll understand why. And so what they found that delinquent behavior often begins in early life. That you could look at someone's early life and pick out some of the things that might point out that they might have more violence in their life as they grow older. Which is not to say that everybody who has a rough beginning to life turns violent, which is um, not true. But if you notice at the very beginning of their life, they might have adverse conditions that they live in, like they poor or homeless, things that are very difficult for younger people to live in that context, which also makes the family a little hostile, neglectful, that type of thing, because they're busy trying to um, feed their family and keep up with the bills and things like that. Um, when they're in kindergarten, the next step is usually there's pretty harsh parenting. They could maybe be mistreated, again, neglected. The parents might not be teaching them the proper behaviors. They're not paying attention to school, and they just, yell at the kid and hope he pays better attention the 30th time that he's yelled at. Okay, post preschool through kindergarten is they have poor school readiness. Usually, um, in the higher socioeconomics, you'll have been read to, maybe your parents practiced the alphabet with you, taught you how to count, and all that type of stuff. There are readiness skills just in life that, so when you get to kindergarten and first grade, that you're kind of ready developmentally for it. And if you don't have the family support, you're not ready. Okay, so you go to school at grade 1 and you start right away with conduct problems. You would think that those students are the naughty ones in the class and the ones who just haven't learned how to behave correctly yet. Um, grades 1 through 4, the next step is school failure. Don't pass their classes, don't do their homework, don't really care. And that is the result a lot of the problems before this when they were younger. Low parent monitoring. So maybe the parents are working until later and the children come home from school and nobody's there, so they do what they want. And we talked about, as far as adolescence, that's a really prime time to get in trouble. And then through grade 7, you will find them hanging out with more deviant peers and starting to get in trouble and not staying home, being out doing other things. Um, and then grades 10 and 11-ish will be where usually the violence will start. And you can see that it's just kind of a pattern that's built on the person's life from the very beginning. Um, it is important to keep in mind. Let me read you this paragraph out of your book because it's really a good one. Although it has been confirmed in hundreds of studies, it's important to keep in mind that the majority of children who have histories of aggressive behavior problems do not grow up to be delinquent. If this seems confusing, think about it this way. The majority of delinquents probably have eaten in fast food restaurants at some point, but the majority of children who eat in fast food restaurants don't grow up to be delinquent. I like that because it doesn't say that you are absolutely, if you start out with, difficulties at home and school starts out difficult, then you're automatically going to be a violent and deviant person. Most of people that start delinquent behavior before adolescence um, usually have a harder time staying out of it when when they do come to adolescence. So people who have problems with the law before adolescence often have psychological issues, which you can see that, it's probably not their fault, but most of them are male, many are poor, and a lot come from homes where divorce has happened. Again, that does not mean everybody who comes from those situations becomes violent or has problems. Just that those that have problems, they trace it back and usually have those harsher beginnings. Um, Chronic delinquents typically come from disorganized families with hostile, inept, or neglectful parents who have mistreated their children and failed to instill in them proper standards of behavior or the psychological foundations of self-control. So if you are a parent, make sure those are some of the things that you talk to your children about, that you teach them when they're young. We need to get moving because I just talked too much on that section. Okay, depression is one of the internalizing problems. Do you know why depression is the most common psychological disturbance among adolescents now? I kind of wonder if we're just more aware, it's more diagnosed, we have more knowledge about what it is. I don't know, but it's becoming a more and more prevalent issue. I'd like you to think about some of the symptoms, physical symptoms and cognitive symptoms of depression. Um, Physical symptoms would be obviously physical. Um, you can see dejection, fatigue, difficulty sleeping, laying around, just can't get up, don't do much with my time. Some of those are the physical ones. Cognitively, then, there's a lot of pessimism, the glass half empty type, self-criticism, I'm just not good enough, those types of symptoms of depression. They're not all in each person, and I'm sure there are more in other people. Okay, let's talk about suicide and non-suicidal self-injury. Um, there are risk factors for suicide attempts. The interesting part is that in all the research, they're the same across genders, ethnicities, and different things. Dial 988 is the suicide number, hotline number. Okay, know these 4 factors so that if it's you, you can get help right away, or if it's someone close to you, you can get them help. The first one is having a psychiatric problem, having a history of suicide in your family, experiencing parental rejection, and being victimized or bullied. And if you have had someone close to you commit or try suicide, you usually find that they have more than one of these issues going on in their lives. May not even be their fault, but it affects them greatly and brings great sadness to everybody around them. You have to kind of be able to understand and not be judgy of people who are experiencing some of these issues. Okay, stress and coping. Let's see if we can take care of some of the stress in our lives. What causes stress? Just think about it. It's not a question that needs an answer from me, but what causes stress in your own life? Remember that you can internalize it or externalize it. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but your book is really has good things to say and interesting, helpful ideas. So you may want to actually read your book. And sometimes you have some people who stress over things, and someone else goes through the same thing and doesn't stress. So it's not the stressor itself. The idea of resilience is the ability to function competently in the face of adversity or stress. So in other words, people who stress may get to, but it doesn't totally break them. And to be resilient is a positive thing. Okay? You have to choose how to deal with the stress on your own. We have lots of ideas and we can give you, but you kind of have to choose what works for you. So there are primary control strategies, like to try to change the stressor. Let's say you're getting ready for a final exam. That is pretty stressful. Lucky this class doesn't have one yet. And yet means not this semester, so don't worry. But the primary control strategy, try to change the stressor. You can't change that there is a test, but you can change how you feel about it by studying and getting ready so that it becomes not as big of a stressor. And then when you have secondary control strategies, you try to adapt yourself to the stressor, which again could be more studying, or it could be I'm too stressed right now to even study, so I'm going to go out for a run. I'm going to watch a movie or do something to distract my mind for a short time and then go back and get ready. It's not a good idea to avoid um, the stressors, well, I just won't take the test and fail, or I'm too stressed to study, so I'll just go in without study. That doesn't help either. Individuals who have strategies, in other words, if you figured out what works for you, are less depressed and less likely to have behavioral problems. So you've had enough stress in your life up to this point, I think, to know which things that you can do to reduce your stress. My daughter runs, and I remember just a funny story when she was in high school or junior high or something. Um, we live kind of by a busy street, and so she said, "Mom, I'm going out for a run. I just can't handle life right now." Her friends were being rude and all that stuff. She said, "So I'm going to go run." She goes, "And I'm going to run as far as I can." And I said, "Well, how about you run half as far as you can? Because you got to turn around and come back." She said, "Oh, good idea." So she took off. I mean, she was gone 40 minutes or so. I get this call on the phone. "Mom, can you come get me?" I'm like, "Okay, where are you?" And she describes it, and she's like far away. And she said, "I ran and ran and forgot to come back halfway through. So I'm exhausted. I can't even walk anymore. I'm so tired. But I'm not depressed. But can you come get me?" So I had to go pick her up, and it was fine. It was just kind of funny that she just ran till she couldn't run anymore.